Okay, one of the things we started looking at, yeah, are all of you logged in? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll try to go with the iterative process for Agile. So I think this was Lev who came up with this, thinking of one of my friends. Anyways, so what she came up with was with check schedule. As a college student, I want to know the game schedule so that I can check if I can attend a game. Conditions for satisfying the story, want to be able to search for my college's schedule, so which means you have to have a list of whichever college you are interested in. Want to be able to see the date, time, opponent, and location. And I said what we want to do is, for your project, come up with a list of these user stories and then specify what the priorities or importance is going to be, as well as the effort. And I think at 10 p.m. last night, Kosh sent me an email saying, well, what do you mean by, I guess that's why you had 10, 20, 20, is it? Yeah. So I see that you had put numbers like 10, 20, would 10 and 20 be valid here? Why not? Why can't I put? Why not put 10? Why wouldn't 10 qualify as a number here, or 4? Yeah, we are going by Fibonacci numbers here. So, by the way, if you email me at 10 o'clock, sometimes I might respond, but I'm no longer in the stage that I used to be 15 years ago. Half my life is spent, well, with my daughter. I travel. You said you play soccer, right? Anyways, how many of you play soccer or are interested? Nobody else, just 3 of you. But anyways, so after my daughter started playing, and she wants. Anyways, I don't know if I should get to. Once I get into it, I just spend too much time on it. But in case you are, well, I'll just show you why I spend so much time with it. It shouldn't be recording. Okay. The lore of soccer, as with almost any sport, I guess, is there is a lot more there than just scoring goals. But if you don't watch much of soccer, then scoring goals is the thing. And she can literally beat half the team when she's scoring. But anyways, when she's playing. So that's why I spend a lot of time with her, and and I keep saying, I hope I'm a reasonable teacher, but I need to be a better father, because she didn't have an option. You have an option of not taking me. So anyways, the issue is, gosh, so half the time I'm not even, so if you want to ask me questions, ask me. in class or sometime. Even if you want to meet me afterwards, just email me and let me know. Unfortunately, we don't have, there's another class immediately after, and many of you have to leave. So if you have questions, try to let me know, and we can try to figure out a time to meet. Okay. But you're not clear on what this entails, right?
No, I am.
You are, okay. Okay. The other piece was, once we have a use case, we want to, we started a project end of last class. We called it last name basketball solution. And we added in, the only project that we added into it was a modeling project called last name basketball modeling project. Right click and add it in our class diagram. So if you already have it, don't add it in, but that's how we add in a class diagram. And once you have a class diagram, do you have a class? How many of you have this class diagram? If you don't have it, right-click on the project, add new item. It should show you the list of all the diagrams that are available. The one that we're interested in is the UML class diagram, and I suggested calling it basketball class diagram. Once you have that in, you can, so if you don't already have this, the way you can add it is to right-click on the editing window and add class. The other option is to go to the toolbox. If you don't see the toolbox, you should be able to go to View and select, where is, yeah, right here, this toolbox here. So, and from there you can drag and drop the class in. And the class that we were looking at, the first one was, we said we want to be able to search by our particular college and whichever college we are interested in. So for that, we need the name of the college as an attribute. So, and we said we'll make college a class. And the way you add in attributes is just, easiest is just to use the enter key. So if I enter, it adds in an option for an attribute. I said college ID is 1, and then college name. Okay, and so we have our use case, our user story, our diagram. The next, we'll be translating it into some code which we don't have as yet over here. We did start looking at the SQL code. We will be connecting to SQL Server on the database side. So for that, we started to explore. Okay, let's see. I had saved this end of last class. I said I will revisit it today. If you have not already opened it up, go to New Query and open up a new query. We want to create I want you to get a little comfortable working on the SQL Server environment. As far as I know, I've not spoken with Dr. Nazir, but are all of you in 3, except for Logan, are all of you in 353? You're not in 353? Okay, when are you planning on graduating? Is it in fall or next spring? You mean in December this year? December 2018? Okay, May, okay. Because if you are planning on graduating in December 2017, you need 353 before you take 452. Okay, but in 353 you should be exploring SQL Server. So what we are doing is a literal translation of what's here. College ID, college name, ID being an integer, and name being a string. In SQL Server, a string is a variable character. Yes.
In 353, you're using Android cards.
Okay.
Do you have a preference what we use in here?
Well, how many of you know what this does? All of you do. What does it do?
I know the way Dr. Nazir described it was that originally there were characters like chars, and then bar cars were better than that because they scaled down, like based on how much of the designated space you actually use. And then he said that in-bar cars were even better than that. Something about scaling, like preserving memory, I guess.
It actually goes to Megan.
You also mentioned that it can handle languages better, like different languages and different characters.
Yeah, as Megan pointed out, actually that's the critical issue. So if you do a Google search of whatever, I think it's mainly the ability to, it's this Unicode format, while VARCHAR uses ASCII. So this enables you to, so if it's storing data that's Japanese or Chinese, this in VARCHAR does a much better job with multilingual data. I think now with mostly with dealing with data and companies that are of a global nature, I think it is advisable to go with the N in front, so we will use that. So yeah, thank you for bringing it up. The previous issue of what you were mentioning, Eric, that versus character versus variable character. The difference was with character you always had it fixed. So if you say this is the common character 200, so regardless of whether it takes up 200 characters or not, it will allocate 200 spaces in memory. Well, variable character takes up only the amount of space that's required. Okay. So this is pretty much what we would do to create a table. Usually, if you are using the approach that you are in 353, are you creating tables there? Okay. So usually, whenever you create, you also want to. There are several ways of doing it. So if you have tables, you also want to be able to drop those tables. So and this is how you would, if you're during the development process, you'll keep making changes, so you want to be able to clean up your database structure. I forget this, Logan, do you remember the if statement?
If object ID, and then the table name in parentheses and quotes, table quotes, is not null.
Is not null. So we I'm trying to think. It's not null. So we do this not null for this. Not equal to null. What did we do?
I just have it as not null.
Is not null. Okay. Okay. The SQL does not use the not equal to for checking for null, I think. Okay. As Logan just pointed out, he was in 353, so we used to use this for whenever this is the clean way of reconstructing a database and tables. So also always reference your database so it goes to the right place. So if I went ahead and did this, it should reconstruct our table for us. And finally, some simple insert statements to insert data. Insert into college. And well, the one thing that you might want to so I want to insert values, and I also usually specify which columns I want to insert into. Now, in this case, which one of these is the meaningful column or attribute? Pardon? Is the ID meaningful in terms, when I say meaningful as a user, if I said ID number 5, does it make sense to you? What would make sense to you? Like, you would look for West Virginia University, not what ID. The ID, so really one of the things that you should be asking is, should we even be the ones who are assigning the ID? Right? So what should the ID be? It should be auto-generated, right? So, yeah. Yeah, in SQL, it's a SQL Server, it's identity. In Oracle, it's some other keyword. So here we use identity. We start with 1 and increment by 1. Okay. So I'm not going to do this data insert, so I comment out. So this is a multi-line comment, / asterisk, asterisk, /. Yes?
Identity is always not null, or do you have to specify that?
Identity, okay, that's another. Identities are not, well, what it will get is there will be an auto-generated value that's given, so in that sense it's not going to be null. But you bring up an important point. So one of the things, whenever you create a table in a database, what should you ensure?
Data can be ended.
Okay, one data in it, but going back to 351, anytime you created a table, what did you want to ensure? Okay, somebody else, actually, okay, how do you ensure data integrity? Okay, primary key is one of the means. So here EJ, what's the primary key here? College ID, okay. So this will be the primary key. The single line comment is this. Okay, there are two ways of making up a primary key. One is to just say primary key at the end of a column, the keywords. But this is not usually good practice. Does anyone know what the other option is? Yeah.
Just have another like college names and primary keys and have them college names.
Well, that's what I did here. This is one way at the end of it. But what was the other that you said? You have to bring it up as a constraint. Name the constraint. PK, so I usually use PK as a prefix for primary keys, followed by the table name, and then primary key, college ID. And what this does is, if you had multiple columns making up a primary key, you could specify it here. Otherwise, you cannot do that. So anyway, so this is considered the better way of specifying a primary key. And also, you can enable and disable constraints, which you cannot do if you set it directly on the column. Okay, so as I was about to enter values or insert values, data, I realized that you can one of the things you can separate the statements with this go keyword. So if you then want usually you won't have the insert statements in the same script, but we are just experimenting with some basic things here. So when we say insert into college, how many columns do we want to insert into? 2. Which are the 2?
College ID and college name.
Okay. And what will be the values here? Okay. Krista, what you just said, can you tell them what's your concern here?
Because in the create table statement, we define college ID as being an auto defined ID, so
Yeah.
we can create its own primary or its own value.
Yeah.
We don't need to define them.
Yeah, as Krista just pointed out, if you define something as a primary key, you don't want to be inserting into that column. You can insert, you can force values in, but it defeats the purpose of having it auto-generated. So usually you would not insert into the auto-generated identity column, so which means that you are just left with one column to insert into, then we can give a series of whatever values. I'm just going to go with a few, but maybe which are not in the Big 12, so that we can also bring in some, well, if you're interested in searching by conferences, what would you have to do? let's see. Duke? Okay. Okay, so now if you were to insert this or run this, it says 9 rows inserted, so how can we know whether it's been inserted or not? What's that? Show? Okay, let's see. If show, Dr. Peace will be very disappointed with you. So anyways, what should you be saying? Somebody other, let's see, Chris, I've not heard you. How do you? Okay, select what? Okay, you can do that. If you just want to do a quick check, actually it's much easier. One of the things I tend to do is use the from first. Where are we selecting from? Okay, so that also should activate the IntelliSense, so college name, or if you just want to make sure you look at everything, it's the asterisk. You can highlight it alone, so you don't keep rerunning everything else, and then execute it. So that should give you a list of the colleges with their associated IDs. Okay, the last thing that we'll do before, well, let's, this should be fairly straightforward. The other option is, there is, and I don't know if it gets activated, so if you go to your database, if you click on the plus sign, if you go into tables, you have a graphical interface, which when you're working with MySQL, you didn't have did you use a graphical interface? You used the command prompt. But MySQL does have like a client graphical interface as well. But if you go into the table, it should sort of give you the structure of the table with the columns, the keys. And if you right-click on the table, you can select, so if you said select top 1,000 rows, it gives you pretty much the same result as what we did with our select statements here. Okay. One other thing that you might want to do is, let me just add this here. Want to be able to search for my college's schedule, want to be able to search, want to be able to see by date, time, often, and location. So one of the things that we are implicitly implying here is whenever we are looking at, for most colleges, what are considered the most important games? Home games? Well, I think at the beginning of the season they play teams they beat by 50, 60 points. Those are not necessarily interesting games. So if you ask a coach in any sport, what's it? Well, they want to get to the, well, whether it's the NCAA, but those are not necessarily guaranteed. So So if you ask a coach what their most important games are, what are they going to tell you?
The higher rate, highly ranked teams.
Highly ranked teams, that's clearly one thing. What's another thing they're going to tell you? Yeah, the conference games. So that's why I was saying that I was implicitly sort of bringing that in, because what about these first 5 teams? They're all in the same conference, like the Big 12 and Logan's team. Yeah. Okay. So the issue is typically you might want to not only search for your college's schedule, but also college's schedule within the conference. So I'll just add that in. I want to be able to search for my college's schedule. Want to be able to see, so I'll say both in and out of conference. So if I want to, I can restrict the schedule to just in-conference games. And then, of course, you can also think of the ranking aspect, but we'll come to that later. And the reason I brought this up is once you bring this in, so let's say we need this as part of our requirement. So I go into my class diagram, and what do I need to do? Do I add in the conference as an attribute into college? So do I just add this in and say conference name or something? How many? Krista says no. How many of you agree? No. Okay, Ashley, why would you disagree with having this here? Okay, so if we make it an attribute of college, what will happen? Okay, Bolaji, what would happen if I make this an attribute of college? What is the problem? You don't know? Okay, Kash?
That the teams will not be able to participate in a conference game, as the teams won't be able to participate in.
Well, for WVU Big 12, I actually have a direct connection right here. And then Texas, Big 12, Duke, ACC. So,
and if you have more than like 4 or 5 conferences.
but I'll just be specifying, so Stanford, Parkton, so it's basically each college, anytime I enter a college, what I'll be doing is I have to add conference as a column here, and as I'm inserting into college, what would I do? I'll also specify the conference name. So is there a problem? So in terms of being able to relate a university or college to a conference, this is not a problem. So what is the problem?
Maybe if you wanted to like search by conference, like search for games in or something like that.
Okay.
When you call the dependency in the college table because the conference is going to be repeated over and over again.
Yeah, it's going to basically if I have so Big 12 and the conference is also going to have some other, like you might want to have something about the conference, like each one has, it's like a headquartered somewhere. I don't know where the Big 12 is headquartered. It's whether it's Texas or someplace. So you might have some attributes that describe the conference itself. And as Liv pointed out, you will be repeating this Big 12 multiple times. So what is the problem with this? There are a couple of problems. One is that the main thing is if you have some change in, and this doesn't usually happen, the change in the name of a conference, I'm trying to think, the bigger name conferences, even like for example, I guess it was, let's see, okay, I was at Illinois when this, I think, happened. It used to be the, well, it still is the Big Ten, but how many teams are in the Big Ten? Yeah, there are more than 10, so I think it was Penn State that came in and they made it 11, but they never changed the name. There are other teams, other conferences, I think, in the Mountain West or something that they changed the names after a while. So if the name has to be changed for a conference, let's say the Big 12 becomes the Big or the Small 8 or something like that. So what do you need to do? Yeah, you have to go through all of the places, and that's where so when you say redundancy, this is an example of redundancy. You're repeating the same data multiple times. If you don't want to repeat it, you want to basically move it into its own class. So we'll call this class conference, and each of our classes will use an ID and a name. Okay, so once we have another class brought in, you want to think of how do they associate. So how do these two colleges, or how do these two classes associate? Right-click on one of them, add. You have different ways of associating them, aggregation, composition, dependency, inheritance, and so on. The one that the simplest is just the association, and you connect or associate these two classes. And we'll quickly set some properties. So if you highlight the association, go to properties, and it says role 1 is going from conference to college, and role 2 is going from college to conference. And you can see that there is an arrow going from conference to college. That implies that the data flow is just one way. You can see that it says is navigable. One side it says true, the other side it says false. We want to be able to navigate both ways, so we will change both to be able to be true. So make this true, that way the arrow disappears, implying that now there's going to be flow both ways.
How did you get to that class?
Which one?
The property class.
The properties, I just highlighted the association, and if it's not already showing up, you should be able to go into view, and let's see the properties window. So highlight whichever, like in this case, the association, go to view, and you see properties there.
Yeah, I have this property box, but I don't feel like the true, I don't know where you got the true false.
True, false,
You have
okay.
to expand.
Yeah, you have to go into the roles, first row, if you expand the plus sign, and then go in and it's all these properties within it. And similarly for the second row. Okay, once you have that, the next thing you have to figure out is what's the multiplicity. Okay, so going from, so this is like, it should remind you of constructing your something in one of the previous classes. What is it? The ERV. Did they use a tool for the ERV? Okay. So anyway, so the same sort of questions is what you're asking yourself. Which are the classes or entities that are associated, and then if they're associated, what's the multiplicity? So what's the multiplicity going from, so what's the question you ask yourself going from conference to college? Yeah.
How many colleges did each conference have?
Okay, so how many, what was your question?
How many colleges did each conference
How many colleges can each conference have? Okay, so what is the response to that? Well, how many colleges can each conference have? Does it ask, so there are two aspects. You just said one too many. So if you were to answer that question, so how many colleges, so what's the answer to it? Well, your question is not so you have the minimum and the maximum, right? So your question is only asking one part of it. Which part of it is it asking? It's not how many colleges are in a conference. So you're really asking the upper end, right? So the lower end is if you are wanting to know what's the minimum, that's a different question. What's the question for the minimum? It's even more simple. It's either 0 or 1, right? So at the minimum. So what is the question? So 0 means it is optional. 1 means it is required. So what is the question? Okay, should a conference have a college? And what's the answer to that? So can a conference exist if there is no associated? Can a conference exist if there is no associated college? Well, in the real world situation, can you have a conference? So which means that you really cannot have, so if you're creating a conference, you want to associate, unless the situation is if somebody speaks, well, they say, I'm going to come up with some conference. As of now, I don't know which colleges will come in. So, but in most cases, I would think that you would say, okay, if I'm creating a conference table, I want to have some colleges already there to be able to associate with it. So if you use that logic, you might just say, okay, the answer is I need to have something like at least one college. So which means which end do I go to set up this multiplicity? Do I set up, so the question pertained to so I asked it from the perspective of conference, right? So I asked for each conference, should it be associated with a college? You said yes. Yeah, so where does it come? Is it here or this side? Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay. So you're saying at this point. Okay. You don't agree?
I think it doesn't matter.
So for conference, so each conference object or instance, how does it associate with college? And you're saying it's something, the numbers here that pertain to this association. Okay?
However,
It's this one here, you're saying. Okay. My requirement is you pick one and then keep it consistent. So if you're saying that this how conference associates with college is represented here, then you always do it that way. So I guess Dr. Pease calls it is it the look across method or something? Is there a name for it? Okay. So, what's it?
I thought you went to Harry Potter.
Okay, so this represents the association of this object to this. So whatever you see here will represent whatever is across, in which case, so we would have to go to college. Okay. So how does conference associate with college? You said it has to be associated with at least one instance of college. And we said it could obviously have multiple colleges. How about the other way? Each college, with how many conferences is associated with? Okay, this is interesting. If I asked you 5 years ago what conference WVU is in, what would you have told me?
The Big East.
The Big East. Currently it's in the Big 12. So how many conferences is a college associated with?
One at a time.
When you can specify time.
Okay, so which means that if you're only, and this is the other question that you have to ask, is what is this application doing? Is it only for like looking up schedules and trying to buy tickets, or are you also looking at colleges' records? If you want to know what is the history of playing a particular team, like Virginia Tech or some other team, in which case, well, we are not just looking at it at this point in time, we are looking at it over a period of time. So if you consider that, then this becomes many. If you're only interested in whatever is happening currently, then it's going to be one. So what do we decide here? Are we going with only, like, if you're not interested in records, is that something to be considered? Previous history of games that they've played?
Let's be interested.
Let's be interested. Okay. Okay. So each college, so in which case we are saying it could be associated with multiple conferences over a period of time. What's the minimum? Should a college be associated with a conference?
Yes.
Yes?
They don't have to be.
Yeah, well, very famously, Notre Dame is independent, so which means you make that optional. So the question is it necessary for a college to be a part of a conference? And the answer is no. So which means it's going to be zero to many. And one of the things that this will bring in is whenever there is data maintained or information maintained over a period of time, so if I asked you what is WVU's record in the Big East, you have to be able to say, or when did they play in the Big East? Well, they're not playing there currently, so how would I know when they played? Yeah.
You have to give the years for
Okay, so where would I put it?
their divinity probably.
Okay, so so the years that they played is actually associated not with either one of these classes or entities, but with the association itself. Right? So unfortunately, there is no association class, which means that whenever there's a many-to-many association, what do you need to do? You have to make another class. So this becomes the class that connects the college and conference. You can, anytime you have classes that connect to other classes, you can do it in various ways. One is the naming of it. You can either say it belongs to, or but usually the better approach is to name it in a more meaningful way. And so once you have that, you'll have to obviously split this. You cannot have it directly going here anymore. So instead, you have to have college associated with college conference, conference associated with this. So let's add that association in. Okay. Now, how many of you can figure out what's the equivalent of this? Obviously, this won't be needed anymore, so you have to figure out what the connection here is.
So can you repeat the question?
Well, instead of this direct connection, now this is the equivalent of the association clause, the one that associates these two. So now you have to figure out the multiplicities going from here to here and here to here. Right? So can you figure that out? So go to the association and then set up the role. We have about 7 or 8 minutes left. So the first thing is I want you to figure out this multiplicity here. And once you've figured out that multiplicity, I want you to come to, well, I want you to be able to obviously work here and set up and see what you need to do. Obviously, Big 12 and Big whatever the other one is, the ACC. So for next class, as we are, what I would like for you to do is to well, we have another 5 minutes, so I will discuss this piece with you. So I want to make sure you're able to do it, and then I want you to experiment with creating the SQL. By the way, if you have made any changes, you can save this file as file save as. So if you're working on a lab computer, make sure you save it onto your thumb drive or someplace where you can retrieve it next class. So the first thing I want you to do for now is to figure out the multiplicities here, and then we won't have time to go beyond that today. So I want you to be able to create the extra tables with some sample data that connects the college with the college conference, and then come up with some simple queries. So, for example, if I want to know all colleges, I want to know which colleges are in the Big 12. So how do I answer a question like that? But first, before you leave, how many of you have figured out this multiplicity here? How many of you have tried it out? Okay, let me come around. So you didn't do anything? One big one. So do you have the good answer program? The thing is, you'll have to, I cannot be monitoring you.
Thanks.
Submit optional both sides. With the original meaning which you said that this conference has to be associated with at least one college. Each conference that you Okay, I want you to figure it out rather than my giving the answer now. So figure it out. Obviously, this will get eliminated, and what's it? Well, once you have this direct connection doesn't make sense. So this will get eliminated, but I kept it here so that you can see what the equivalent is going to be. And I want you to think about it, and then once you have this established, then I want you to create how many more tables would you require here? You would need two more, one to represent conference and a second to represent college conference. And I want you to do something similar, like obviously you'll have to say create table conference and create table college conference. I want you to add those two in as well. Yes.
I don't understand our statement.
It's this one here. Well, all that this is doing, how many of you are able to decipher this? Okay, let me ask Ashley what does it.
Every time you run it, instead of altering the table, it'll automatically drop it to begin with and then create it.
Yeah, what Ashley just said, it just drops. So what we are wanting is, as we are doing our development, you won't want something already there. It will, and if you try to create, you can alter tables, but it's not as clean sometimes. So if you drop and recreate, it's a cleaner way during your development process. Obviously, once you put it into production, released it, you can't do it. But, okay, so do this before coming to class. We'll discuss this, and then we will get into MVC to see how the class will drive it without us going into the database side. Okay.
So we should just put in things in the database.
What's it?
We just add things in conference.
Yeah, there are two conferences, Big 12 and the ACC, and then you have to connect the colleges to these conferences.
Are you creating the third table as well?
Yes. Yeah, that's there you can connect the two, otherwise you can.
In our model,
Yeah.
since we already have the connections, do we need to add the primary keys into our assistant identity? Or just the date?
Yeah, just the date should be fine. In the class diagram, you don't need to represent it, obviously, on the database.
Right. No idea. Are you ready?